Good morning, children. How are you all? Today, I'm going to take up a lesson from your Vistas, and the name of the chapter is On the Face of It by Susan Hill. In this chapter, there are two characters. One is a teenager boy whose name is Derry. He is a 14 years old boy, and half side of his face is burnt. Uh, he met with some accident and acid fell on his face and half side of his face is burnt, and because of that he suffers from inferiority complex. He has a negative attitude and he hates people like anything. And the second main character of the story is Mr. Lamb, who is an old man and he owns a garden. The story starts when this little boy, Derry, he enters into the garden of Mr. Lamb thinking that there is no one inside the garden. But he was unaware of the fact that Mr. Lamb was very much there and he was watching him. Mr. Lamb warns Derry, be careful, you may trip over and you may fall down and hurt yourself. Derry is surprised because he had thought that there is no one inside the garden. So he wants to go back. He wants to run out of the garden. Mr. Lamb says, you don't have to be afraid of anything, and this garden is yours. You may play here if you want to. And Derry tries to justify himself again and again. He says, no, I didn't want to trespass. I didn't want to intrude in your space. Mr. Lamb says, it's okay, child, it's okay. There is nothing to be afraid of, and it's okay if you have come. Lot many children come in my garden, and it's open for all. Uh, and a conversation starts between these two people. Derry is carrying a very negative attitude towards the world. He hates the world because of the comments, because of the sarcastic comments, because of the treatment that was meted out to him. He really hated people. He thought that they always make fun of him, they always talk about him, and he's always the talk of the town. And people just have to talk about his half burnt face. To this, Mr. Lamb says, you should not carry so much of hatred towards people. It's all about perception, it's all about how you see the world. Derry says, you won't understand because what I go through, the sarcastic comments that I have to listen to every day, it has eaten me up. Mr. Lamb says, okay, you may have burnt face, but I also have an artificial tin leg. So his leg was blown off in a war. Mr. Lamb's leg was blown off in a war, and he had lost it. And it was replaced by an artificial tin leg. Derry is very surprised and he says, okay, so your leg was blown off in the war, but then you can always hide your disability in a pant. No one will see it because the leg is inside the trousers and no one is going to see it. But my half burnt face, everybody is going to look at my face and comment on it. Mr. Lamb says, you don't have to believe in whatever people say or talk about you. You have your own two eyes, you have your own brain to use, and you should perceive the world uh, as you want to, not as the world wants you to. We all have disabilities, we all have some shortcomings, but that doesn't mean that we stop loving life and it is the end of the world. No. We have to carry on with our disability. The sooner we realize that we must overcome it, the better it is for us. Now, through the conversation, it leads to a revelation that Derry suffers from negative attitude. He's very much pessimistic and he hates the world. And again and again, he tries to bring the topic uh, to his burnt face, and Mr. Lamb tries to console this boy. Mr. Lamb tries to motivate this boy, encourage him that my child, this is not the end of the world, and you should come out of it. You should stop worrying about things. Then, through various examples, Mr. Lamb tries to motivate Derry. He tells him, "Child, see, there are so many plants in my garden. Some may call it, or some may call these the weed, and some may call them the beautiful flowers. The beauty lies in the eyes of beholder. The same thing may look beautiful to you, but the same thing may look ugly to someone else. So it is just the perception. It is all in your perception how you perceive things." Then Derry tells him about himself, and he says that there had been some instances where he was forced to feel that he is not a normal child. He says that when I came out of the hospital, people told my parents that you should have left Derry in the hospital itself. He should not have been brought at home. So Mr. Lamb says, but that is not how the things work. How would that world would be where everybody is like himself? Like if all the lame people they live in a world, all the blind people live in a separate world, how things would be? Things would be terrible, horrible, because there would be no one who will encourage or motivate others. All will suffer from the same problem. So how that world is going to look like? Daddy says, you talk strange things. I don't understand you. You talk weird things. And slowly gradually, there is some transformation in Derry's perception. Derry starts feeling confident. Mr. Lamb tells him that there was this man who shut himself inside a room because he was afraid of venturing outside. That man was afraid that he may get killed on the road, and so he shut himself up, rather locked himself up in a room. Derry was curious to know what happened next when he shut himself up like that. Mr. Lamb told him that he lived his life like that, and he was comfortable in his home, but once a painting fell on his head and he died. See, children, death will come. It is inevitable. It will come at its destined hour. You cannot stop it, neither you nor I, nor anyone. But that doesn't mean that we should always be afraid of death. We should live in fear. No. Life is not like that. It is not to be lived that way. It is to be lived with enthusiasm, with a positive attitude. And thus, Mr. Lamb was able to infuse confidence in him. And at the end of the chapter, Derry says, okay, I must inform my parents. I have not informed my parents. I must go home. My parents must be worried about me, and I'll come back soon. To this, Mr. Lamb says, everybody says they will come back, but they never. And here we find a tinge of pessimism in Mr. Lamb also, though outwardly he looks very confident, but somewhere deep inside his heart, he's a lonely person. But yeah, he makes sure that it doesn't become evident, and that boy Derry should be motivated enough to lead a normal life. He should come out of his cocoon. So then Mr. Lamb says, okay, my child, you can always go back, and but I'm sure you will not come. To this, Derry says, how can you be so sure? I will go home, tell my parents I have got legs, I can always run, and will come back. And he goes. Mr. Lamb, thinking that the boy will not come back again to help him with his plucking the apples, he starts doing the work. He had to pluck the apples from the trees because he used to make jams, jellies, candies, toffees for the children. And it so happens that when Derry comes back, uh, before he enters the garden, there's a shift of scene, and we find that Mr. Lamb falls down from the ladder, from the tree, and he falls on the ground and he dies. This is how he dies.